It's Bethel here, your Daily Divinity Coach, here for episode 27 of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival. I'm going to go ahead and tag a few people. If you've heard me give my introduction before, you're watching the recorded video, feel free to go ahead and fast forward a few minutes. I'm just going to go ahead and tag some people, see if we can get an audience going, and then we'll go ahead and start this show. So just tagging a few people right now. And then we'll go get started in a minute. So, see who we can get involved here. See who's live. And again, just tagging a few people, and then we'll get started with the show momentarily. We'll get an audience going and get started with episode 27. Again, of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival. So just seeing who's online right now and letting them know that we're live and that we'll be getting a show going really soon here. All right, just going to tag a few more people. Just a couple more, see who else is out there who's live. And we'll get started momentarily. All right, that should give us an audience. All right, we got an audience going. All right, shout out Demaloo. I got Lady. All right, I'm sure more will be joining us soon. So, again, my name is Bethel. Everybody call me Bethel. I'm your Daily Divinity Coach here for episode 27 of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival. Very excited about this episode today. I'm bringing the intrigue. What do I mean? Well, we'll be talking about Angela Davis today and George Lopez. And you might be thinking, wow, Angela Davis, right? Political activist, academic, George Lopez, comedian, right? What do these two have in common? Well, we're going to get to that, and it's going to be exciting. So anyhow, episode number 27, Angela Davis, George Lopez, and the rebels yell to manifest immortality. It wouldn't be Sunday Weekly Revival if we didn't talk about immortality. So again, episode 27, Sunday Weekly Revival. We're here now live on Facebook Live. It's Sunday, December 27th. Happy holiday weekend. Hope you're enjoying yourself, hoping you're staying safe. It's still COVID season, COVID year, COVID pandemic, and I hope you're protecting yourself and being safe. I'm just going to give a brief introduction, allow a few more minutes for some people to join us, and then we'll get started with the content of today's show. So, about me, I am a Master of Divinity. I'm a graduate of Harvard University Divinity School. Originally from California, from San Francisco. Live out here in Boston now, actually not far from where I went to graduate school here, not far from Harvard. So I'm out here in Boston on the East Coast. And what else about me? I post every day on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and except for Sundays, because Sundays I'm here with you live. I'm starting on Instagram Live at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then here on Facebook Live at 11:30 a.m., although I know it's a little late today, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for Sunday Weekly Revival. And I'm here every Sunday doing Sunday Weekly Revival, except for the first Sunday of the month, I do my monthly mailbag. And so this next Sunday will be my third, my monthly mailbag. So what do I do for my monthly mailbag? I take your pre-submitted questions and I provide thoughtful responses. So if you have any questions about today's show, any of my posts, any questions about past shows, or just anything about me, feel free to submit those questions. You can submit those questions to me via IM, DM. If you have my phone number, text me, call me. And you can also go to my website, dailydivinitycoach.com, and everything here you can submit, not just questions to my monthly mailbag, but you can also, if you have a birthday coming up and you want it to be your first reverse birthday, because you know I teach about first reverse birthdays, you can learn about that You can request an e-card. I'll send you an e-card from your first reverse birthday. But there's a lot of good information. You can learn more about me and my work, and here at dailydivinitycoach.com. You can also order manifest bracelets. I know it's hard to see, but I produced these sets of manifest bracelets. There's a blue one that says manifest abundance, there's a gray one that says manifest justice, and a black one that says manifest immortality. So if you haven't yet received your set of manifest bracelets, please reach out. You can fill out a form at dailydivinitycoach.com. Again, if you have my phone number, you can email me or text me or call me. You can IM me, DM me. I just need a name and an address, and I'll send you a set. Now, I have been asked, people have said, Beto, I love the bracelets, but I don't think I'd really wear them. But I know my brother would, or I know my friend would, or whatnot. Happy to do that. I've done that in the past. I'll send it to them. If you want me to send them to them directly, they don't live near you. They live in another state or another part of the state. Happy to do that. I just need a name and an address. So, again, if you haven't received your manifest bracelets, please reach out. I'd love to send them to you. So, to the content of the show. What do Angela Davis and George Lopez have in common? Well, there is a great connection I'm going to point out. But before I do that, I do, to kick it off, I do want to say that I have seen both of them live. I saw Angela Davis talk back in 1991. I was a recent college graduate. And I'd always been tremendously impressed with Angela Davis since I was a small child. I remember seeing her on TV and media, magazines and whatnot, and I was just so impressed with her. I remember as a young child just being literally in awe, like, wow, like just such a powerful figure, such a strong force, so intelligent and just beautiful and everything. And so anyhow, I have seen her, and it was great. When I seen her live talking, it wasn't a huge place. There's only about, there could have been more than 100 of us there, so it was fairly intimate, and it was awesome. It was something, a person I'd always wanted to hear speak, and I got to hear her speak. So that was back in '91. I heard George Lopez, he's a stand-up comedian. I actually saw his stand-up comedy routine. It was this time of year. It was the holiday season back in 04, 05, right? 2004, 2005 holiday season. And it was in the California desert, there near Palm Springs, at one of the casinos there near Palm Springs. And I was actually, two of my cousins were there with me, and it was joyous. It was a great time to see George Lopez perform his stand-up comedy routine. So anyhow, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to flip this here so you can see my notes. I'm going to start talking about Angela Davis. So, some background information on Angela Davis. Angela Davis, born 1944 in Birmingham, Alabama. So she was born in the South. She's a political activist, philosopher, academic, and author. Written many books, written many articles. She's professor, I have problems pronouncing that, but a retired professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Some more information about her childhood growing up. She lived in the Dynamite Hill. This was the name of her neighborhood in Birmingham, Alabama. The Dynamite Hill neighborhood of Birmingham. Why was it called Dynamite Hill? Tragically, because homes in that neighborhood were bombed. White folk were bombing the homes of African Americans who were moving into the neighborhood, right? Who were desegregating the neighborhood, this middle class neighborhood African Americans were moving into, and so whites were bombing homes to try and intimidate them to move out. So this is part of her background, part of her upbringing. As a Girl Scout, Angela Davis, as a Girl Scout, I want to emphasize that, right? She wasn't just, Girl Scouts back then weren't just selling cookies in Birmingham when Angela Davis was growing up. She was marching as a Girl Scout and picketing to protest racial segregation in her town, in her city of Birmingham. In 1963, tragic heinous church bombing. The Ku Klux Klan, right, the terrorist organization, racist, white supremacist terrorist organization, bombed a church. and 4 African-American girls, 4 young girls, were killed in that church bombing. Sad to think about even today. Angela Davis was, being from Birmingham, she was personally acquainted with the victims, these 4 young girls, and it had a dramatic effect on her life. As you can imagine, these young girls were in church and were killed by the Ku Klux Klan in this bombing. Anyhow, moving on. In 2020, Angela Davis was listed as the 1971 Woman of the Year in Time Magazine. So what Time Magazine did is they put out this edition in 2020, and they went back 100 years. And for every year, they named a Woman of the Year. And Angela Davis was the 1971 Woman of the Year. She was also included in Time Magazine, also did another edition of the 100 Most Influential People. And she was in that too. I mean, she's highly influential, right? And recognized as such. As I was preparing for this episode, I read that she, at one point, because she's not just famous in the U.S., she's famous globally. At one point, she went and spoke in Cuba, and it's reported that the noise of the crowd is so loud, they're exuberating their joy of having Angela Davis there to hear from her, that you could barely hear her, because everybody was just shouting and screaming and just pure excitement and joy to have Angela Davis there in their presence. So I say that to say this: she was famous not just here in the U.S., but abroad as well. Recently, she was in the news. Angela Davis launched her first fashion collaboration. And I wish I would have called my youngest son spending this holiday with his mom. He'll be with me for the New Year's. It was his choice. He wanted to spend the Christmas with the mom and the New Year's with dad. Anyhow, I forgot to call him before the episode, but he's 15, right? But when he was in middle school, and he's like 11, so it's going on 4 or 5 years now, he started dealing with sneakers and clothes, and he actually makes money doing it. He buys and resells sneakers and clothes, and anyhow, he'd be interested to know about this, and he probably already does. But Angela Davis, recently in the news, her first fashion collaboration with the renowned LA label. They're going to be producing t-shirts and hoodies with her approved image, and the series is going to be called Heroes of Blackness. So she's still popular now. In 1970, so we're going back 50 years ago, guns belonging to Angela Davis were used in an armed takeover of a courtroom in Marin County, California. So this was in Northern California. 4 people were killed during this armed takeover of Marin County, California. And I don't want to go into much detail about what happened and how the people were killed, but if you want to learn more, you can just Google the Soledad brothers. There's these individuals in prison they call the Soledad brothers, and one of their brothers, who wasn't in prison, was trying to free them. And anyhow, people were killed. But the guns that were used, apparently, or some of the guns that were used, were traced back to Angela Davis. They said it belonged to Angela Davis. So as a result, she was prosecuted for 3 capital felonies, including conspiracy to murder. So this is an academic, right? She's an academic. She's also a political activist, yes, and a philosopher, but she's an academic. So she spent most of her life studying, right, and teaching and whatnot. And now she's facing 3 capital felonies, including conspiracy to murder. She was jailed for over a year. She spent over a year in jail. And initially, she was held in solitary confinement. Mind you, she wasn't prosecuted yet. I mean, she wasn't, they didn't deem her to be guilty. She was just accused of these crimes. And nonetheless, they put her in solitary confinement. She did get out of solitary, but that's where she was held initially. But you can imagine the effect this had on her, right? Anyhow, she was acquitted of all charges in 1972. They acquitted her of all charges, and she was freed. Fast forward 25 years, And in 1990, obviously a lot happened in those 25 years, but I only have 30 minutes with you, and I'm grateful for those 30 minutes. So I want to honor that. So fast forward 25 years, and in 1997, Angela Davis co-founded the Critical Resistance Organization. What is the Critical Resistance Organization? It's an organization with the mission to abolish and the prison industrial complex. And in 2003, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this, in 2003 she published the book R-A-R-E, Are Prisons Obsolete? Question mark, right? Are they even necessary? Great book. It's 115 pages, so it's not a big book. It's obviously rich in content, but not a big book. And I reread it over the weekend in preparation for this show. And I encourage you, if you have looking for something to read over the holidays or whatnot, Angela Davis, 2003, Are Prisons Obsolete? Anyhow, in the book, she talks about, obviously, the prison industrial complex, which I've talked about in past episodes and written about in posts. But just to go and review, just for us to review some statistics. In the late 1960s, there were 200,000 prisoners in the U.S. 30 years later, that number was raised by 10 times. In the late 1960s, 200,000. 30 years later, right? Say the year 2000, over 2 million. Over 2 million. Did crime spike 10 times? 1,000% in 30 years? No. There's something else behind it. What? The prison industrial complex. The U.S., and we've talked about this before, the U.S. makes up less than 5% of the global population. Yet more than 20% of prisoners worldwide are here in the U.S. So what happened? How did we get here? In the 1980s, right, I was in high school, middle school, early college. 1980s was the Reagan era. And Reagan, I can't give all credit to Reagan because Nixon was the designer, right? He was the visionary of this, bad visionary of this, but Reagan was the implementer. So Reagan took Nixon's vision and implemented this tough on crime strategy. Not a strategy, it's a myth. That by being tough on crime and locking everybody up, Joe Biden was part of this too, our incoming president. Can't let him off the hook. By being tough on crime, we'll have safer communities. It's a myth. Angela Davis says it's a myth in her book, in her writing, other writings she's done, in her speeches. Mass incarceration has had little or no effect on official crime rates. Actually, there's a time when crime rates were like either level or falling during this whole buildup of the prison industrial complex, Davis says. So what do you get? What do you get with all this? Well, more prisoners, all it does is produce more prisons. You're just feeding the system. That's all you're doing. And feeding the system, so who's benefiting? Obviously we're not, right? The taxpayers aren't benefiting. Who's benefiting? Construction industry, right? When you build a prison, the construction industry wins, right? There's money there. Dial soap, right? More prisoners, they gotta wash themselves, right? Dial soap makes a ton of money. Believe it or not, Famous Amos cookies. I remember when I was a kid when Famous Amos cookies came out. Angela Davis says Famous Amos made out, right? More prisoners, they sell more cookies. AT&T, Vitapro Foods, the list goes on and on and on of all these corporations making money off the prison industrial complex. And this is not to mention the turnkey solutions, because there's private prisons that promote themselves as turnkey solutions. We'll take care of everything. We'll build the prison, we'll hire the guards. You don't have to worry about everything. We're going to take care of the prisons for you. And they sell this to the government. And not just here, but it's been exported abroad. There's private U.S.-based corporations, these prison corporations that are doing their thing in South Africa. Angela Davis talks about the nation of Turkey, where political prisoners have actually died in a death fast against U.S. prisons, these supermax prisons, right, where U.S. prisoners are held captive in their cells for 23 hours out of 24 hours. 23 of 24 hours a day, just held captive, isolated in their cells, not let out for that time. Anyhow, political prisoners in Turkey have actually died doing death fasts to protest constructions of supermax prisons in Turkey that would obviously hold them, right, the political prisoners. So it's not just here. I mean, they're exporting this stuff. It's amazing. It's disgusting is what it is. Anyhow, more prisons does not lower crime. That's a myth. So how do people buy into this? Well, in California, where Angela Davis, he's the example of California. That's where she is. Now, obviously, she grew up in Alabama. It was sold because the politicians said, it's going to revitalize the economies of rural California. We're going to bring jobs to places like Soledad and Vacaville, right? As most of the prisons in California are in rural parts of rural, depressed parts of California. So people bought in. All right, lock them up, and we're gonna have jobs, and just like what? Low safer communities? No, it's a myth. There were jobs, obviously, but the real winners was the prison industrial complex, right? These corporations, they're feeding off prisons. So anyhow, going back to some statistics, and I'm going to use Angela Davis's statistics. So she's writing back in 2002, 2003. So she writes, in 2002, the prison population in California, 35.2% Chicano, Latino, right, Mexican, 30% African American, 29% white. So even though in 2002, whites made up the majority of adults in California, the majority of prisoners weren't white. Disproportionately, they were Mexican, Chicano, right, Latino, or African American. Now, nationwide, they're disproportionately African American, then Latino, but in California, disproportionately Chicano, right? So anyhow, we're going to move a little bit and talk about ancient texts. I'm going to recite a piece of ancient text. The divine hath anointed me to preach good tidings unto the meek, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison to them that are bound. Okay, I know most of you have heard me talk before, some of you even read my post, and you know that I take a literal interpretation of immortality, right? I say literally we can stop or reverse the aging process. I say literally we can manifest immortality like the great teacher did, right? I don't buy into this idea of this metaphorical or figurative thing, this fourth world, fourth sun interpretation of immortality. Likewise, Angela Davis does not buy into this fourth world, fourth sun interpretation of this ancient text. She says, if this ancient text says, proclaim liberty to the captives, right? Open the prisons, then so be it, right? Literally. Let's abolish prisons, right? Literally, let's manifest immortality. Literally, if we are created in the image of the divine, and the divine is ageless and endless, that means we're ageless and endless. Literally, not figuratively. Figuratively is fourth world, fourth sun trickery when it comes to prisons, when it comes to aging, when it comes to immortality. Fifth world, fifth sun, literally we can manifest immortality. Literally, we should be not just proclaiming liberty for the captives, but literally we should be opening the prisons. We should be abolishing the prisons. That's what that ancient text says. It's not about just the spirit and the soul. It's about the bodies and the minds too. So anyhow, Davis says prison reform, not enough. We got to abolish prisons. And she puts it in line with other abolition movements, including slavery, lynching, segregation. And what's the connection? She says that prisons, like these other institutions, right, slavery, lynching, segregation, are racist. They're racist institutions, right? Disproportionately affecting African Americans and Chicanos, Latinos, Mexicans, and such. And she quotes she writes right there in her book about the 13th Amendment, right? We know from our history classes and whatnot, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery except as a punishment for crime. So even though slavery has been abolished, it really hasn't, because it can still exist, and it does, as a punishment for crime, prisoners, right? And so after the passage of the 13th Amendment, what happened was, according to Angela Davis and to our history books, there were these prison labor chain gangs, right? People, individuals, corporations actually benefited from free labor, these prison labor chain gangs. And corporations are benefiting from medical experiments. They're using the bodies, right, of prisoners for medical experiments. The research dermatologist, Albert Klingman, a father of retinol A. So if any of you work on the fine lines with retinol A, apply that to your faces and whatnot, your guy, right, Albert Klingman, right, and your guy, my guy, I've used it too. Albert Klingman, I like my product. Anyhow, Albert Klingman, father of retinol A, he actually experimented on prisoners, harmed prisoners in his experiments. His experiments were deemed unethical. Holmesburg Prison was the place where he'd go, not just to do experiments on prisoners' bodies, but to teach others how to do it, how to institute these unethical practices. The pharmaceutical industry has done it. They've used prisoners' bodies, right? The pharmaceutical industry. It actually helped propel the pharmaceutical industry to the point now where it's like controls a lot of people's lives is what it does. A lot of people are addicted to pharmaceutical drugs, and I might do an episode on that at another time. But anyhow, moving on. So anyhow, for Angela Davis, reform is not enough, right? We got to abolish prisons. So you're thinking, as I did, right? Well, what's the alternative? What are we going to do with people who commit crimes? So she talks about a few things. Decriminalization of drug use, right? We decriminalized alcohol use, decriminalized drug use. Okay, what else? Decriminalize undocumented immigrants. There's a lot, and I've showed you numbers before. There's a lot of undocumented immigrants locked up in ICE facilities, right? Detention facilities. So she says decriminalize undocumented immigrants. What else? She talks about investing in education, right? When you abolish the prison industrial complex, there's going to be money around, extra money. So what do you do with that money? Invest in education, physical and mental care, recreation, housing, jobs, living wage programs, drug treatment, and conflict resolution. But still, what about the law? What about the law? I'm not a lawyer. I'm a divinity coach. But my firstborn son, he's actually finishing up law school in San Francisco right now. He's in his very last year. He'll be finished in May. So he knows more about this than I do. But from what I read from the book, Angela Davis talks about restorative or she talks about restorative justice, reparations. So as I understand, basically the lawbreaker would become a debtor, right? The break the law, now you owe a debt. You have to restore or make reparations. So now we're going to move from Angela Davis, right, abolishing prisons, to George Lopez. And I'm going to give some background information on George Lopez, and then we'll make the connection. So going on to George Lopez. He was born 1969, LA, California, right? Chicano. George Lopez is known for starring in his own self-produced sitcom, right? The George Lopez, his own show, George Lopez. And it ran for 6 seasons, from 2002 to 2007. He's one of the few Chicanos, Latinos to star in a TV comedy series. So you might be asking, who are the others? Desi Arnaz, right? Remember I Love Lucy? Desi Arnaz, Cuban. Starred, our Cuban American starred. He really started it all, right? Freddie Prinze. Remember last week I talked about Freddie Prinze, still my favorite comedian, Puerto Rican from New York. And also George Lopez was heavily influenced by Freddie Prinze. George Lopez lobbied for Hollywood to give Freddie Prinze a star on the Hollywood Walk of Stars. John Leguizamo, another Latino that had his own TV series. So there hasn't been a lot, amazingly, as big a population as we are. But George Lopez is right there with these folk here, with his own TV series. He's also a stand-up comedian. I talked about seeing one of his shows, and he has film credits. Right? He's been in movies like Real Women. I love this. Real Women Have Curves. Let me say that again. Real Women Have Curves. Bread and Roses, another great film. Spy Next Door, and a bunch of others that he's been in, right? He was the two-time host of the Latin Grammy Awards and also co-host of the Emmy Awards. Love this right here. He's done a lot for charity. He was the featured celebrity golfer at the Bob Hope Classic in 2004. And in 2004, he was also the featured celebrity golfer at the Pebble Beach National Pro-Am. And I've actually had the pleasure of attending actually I think it's 2 Pro-Ams at Pebble Beach. And anyhow, it was in 2004, that was just before. But he was there in 2004 as the celebrity golfer in Pebble Beach for the National Pro-Am. He has his own charity. It's called the Ann and George Lopez Foundation. And I did not know this, but before I did my research for the show, in 2004, he was honored as the Artist of the Year and so he received an award from the Harvard Foundation for being the Artist and Humanitarian of the Year award in 2004. That's awesome. Great information that I didn't know before doing my research. In 2005, Time Magazine named him one of the 25 most influential Hispanics in America. All right, so that was the background information on George Lopez. Now, the connection with Angela Davis and why I'm bringing George Lopez into episode 27. Well, part of the title of episode 27 is Rebels Yell, right? George Lopez, recently it was announced that he's teaming up with Amazon for a 1-hour drama series. It's going to be entitled Once Upon a Time in Aztlan. Aztlan, accent on the last A, Aztlan, right? What is it going to be about? It's about an LA-based Chicano family that's coming to terms with the falsehoods of the American dream. But what I really want to do is focus on this right here, right? Aztlan. That's a rebel's yell, right? When Angela Davis says, literally, it's time to abolish prisons, right? It's overdue, right? But we need to abolish prisons. That's a rebel's yell, right? When Bethel says, aging can be stopped or reversed, right? That we need to interpret the example of the great teacher literally, right? That we can manifest immortality, that we're designed, right? We're created in the image of the divine, for which there is no age, right? There is no end. That means that we are ageless and endless. That's a rebel's yell. When George Lopez, right? Hollywood star George Lopez names, right? Brings in Aztlan into the name of his next show. That's a rebel's yell, right? Because we know the impact. We know what it means, right? David Carrasco, right? My co-advisor in divinity school and seminary here at Harvard University, Professor David Carrasco has told us, he's proven, Aztlan is not a myth. It's a reality. What do we mean? Well, when the Mexica Azteca Empire, right, fell to the Spaniards, the Europeans, there was a prophecy that the descendants, right, of the Mexica Azteca would migrate back north, right, to the ancestral homeland of Aztlan, right? Where is Aztlan? Well, the Hopi, right, the Native Americans, the Hopi have told us that the Maya and the Mexica Azteca are Hopi. They're part of the Hopi. and that they didn't complete the sacred migration, the sacred 4-directional migration, that they needed to come back north, right, to the ancestral homeland to finish that migration. They needed to come back to Aztlan, right, to the southwest. So George Lopez, when he uses that word Aztlan, right, in the title of his next show, that's a rebel's yell. It's a rebel's yell, right? Saying it's time, folk. It's the fifth world, the fifth sun. You got to get all this fourth world, fourth sun out of your head. It's time to move forward, right? It's time to do what? Abolish prisons, right? It's time to manifest immortality, right? It's time to stop or reverse the aging process, right? It's the time to take ancient texts, like the one I recited earlier, literally, right? To abolish prisons. It's time to literally gain that understanding, that wisdom that we are created in the image of the divine, who is ageless and endless, making us ageless and endless. So it's that rebel's yell, right? The rebel's yell of George Lopez, the rebel's yell of Angela Davis. That's the connection. So I'm going to end now because I'm sure, I'm over time. I'm always over time, but you know that now. Anyhow, I thank you. I'm so grateful and appreciative for you, for each one of you, for this audience, to be able to share this information with you today. I hope you join again next week. I'm here every Sunday. Next week's going to be my monthly mailbag, so it's going to be fun. I'm going to take your pre-submitted questions and provide thoughtful responses. So if you have any questions about the content of today's show, past shows, posts, anything at all, please submit them via text. If you have my phone number, or call me. If IM me, you can DM me. You can go to my website, dailydivinitycoach.com. Download a form and submit your question that way. If you haven't received your bracelets yet, you can also download a form on my website, dailydivinitycoach.com, or IM me, DM me, text me. All I need is an address and a name, and I can ship these to free anywhere in the U.S. and until the end of the year, anywhere in North America or Europe. So again, thank you so much for joining. I hope you come back next week. I'm here every Sunday starting at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Instagram Live. And if you're up earlier than that, or you're available earlier than that, I'm also on here on Facebook Live at 8:30 and 11:30, on Instagram Live at 8 a.m. and 11 a.m. So for a full hour, I'm live either on Instagram or Facebook on Sunday morning. So again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. May you have a blessed rest of your holiday season, whether it's nighttime or daytime, wherever you're at. May the rest of your day or your night be blessed for you and your family. And please, it's still COVID, so please be safe. Don't put the divine to the test. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and shut this down now. Hope to see you again next week. Bye-bye.